Getting longer and longer.
That's the most important.
Turns people away.
Oh my God. I used your name to sneak in.
Mr. Ebert, will you autograph my
I
sis?
saw you coming in with that book under your arm, and I said, there's a woman with taste. What's your name?
When?
Of course, you have the first edition.
I
There
know.
are 4 new ones.
I know. I buy them every other year.
Good evening. Hi. Get their seats. I'd like to thank you all, and by all I mean all of you, for coming. It's a great crowd, and I think a real tribute to a film that deserves it. I'm Bob Rosen. I'm director of UCLA Film and Television Archive, and I'm also a member of the Los Angeles Film Critics Association. And on behalf of both organizations who are sponsoring this event, I'd like to welcome you. I also worked this room as a teacher, and for a number of years, one of the high points of the courses that I gave was a screening of Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. Let's take a look at the film, but I'd like to introduce some of the people who are here. I'd like to present a critic who takes risks, steps over the boundaries, dares to provoke. Michael Dare, who's now writing for Billboard, has written for LA Weekly. A number of journalists, including parenting. Michael, would you come here and say a few words and maybe introduce some of our hosts, some of our people? Thanks.
Well, thank you all for coming to this. I can't possibly explain why this is one of my favorite movies of all time. There's almost no excuse for it. I can't say it's the best movie ever made, but I can honestly say it's one of my favorites. I sort of feel that for the Los Angeles Film Critics Association to pay tribute to this film is sort of like the National Wine Critics Association paying tribute to Boone's Farm. I'm very proud to present it and enjoy ourselves. Please stick around afterwards, and the people who made the movie can explain themselves. Well, I'd like to invite the cast and down here to discuss this film.
Come on, don't be shy. Come on. Haji, where's Haji?
Haji, come here.
Come on down.
I don't know yet.
Let me introduce Charles Napier. David Gurian. Lazar. Williams. Ebert. Russ Meyer. And Haji. And Michael Blodgett.
man that gave us a shot, or there were two men, Abe Burroughs, the noted playwright, and Darrell Zanuck. And they had seen an earlier film that was making a few bucks in New York. They couldn't get a print because we were booked in about 190 theaters. And at that time, that was a lot of theaters for an independent film. So they had to go to a theater that was local to them and happened to be a stroke house down on 42nd Street. The two big people went there and saw the film, and supposedly Burroughs said, klutz like that can make that successful and that attractive for $69,000, you had to throw him a bone. So that's how it really began. I went over to Fox and met the son, Richard Zanuck, and he gave me $5,000. By that time, I had become quite friendly with Roger. We thought a lot about the same kind of ladies anyway. So, I respected the fact that, of course, he was much younger than myself, and he couldn't put a certain amount of input into the picture that I couldn't by myself. Fortunately, not for some people, but the Manson murders had come along at that time, so I was able to incorporate that as a basis for the ending of the film. Zanuck himself, in a long cablegram that he sent me from Cannes after Roger finished this marvelous treatment, he says, I think it's a little tough, that whole aspect of using or utilizing the Manson killings, but I'm sure you'll use good taste. Roger then completed the script, and it was one of the most fulfilling experiences of my life to be to work under a circumstance where heretofore I'd only worked with a crew of 5. Now I had about 55. A lot of Indians to do your bidding, and I shall never forget it. It was an experience that was probably the most rewarding period of my life. That's a long speech.
Well, that's sort of a generic question for all of the actors who are here today, which is basically, what was your life like in 1969 when you got cast in this movie, and how did this film change your life? Let's start with Michael Blodgett.
I'll tell you, I haven't seen this film in a long time. It was made 20 years ago. I'll tell you something, watching it knocked me down. I'm not kidding you. Honestly, I haven't seen it maybe once in 15 years. And I had at that time, I'm not an actor anymore. I stopped doing anything on camera about 1976, and I've been a writer ever since. And I've written some novels, and I've written several movies. And but back then, I was heavily into acting, and it was my career. And as a matter of fact, I was going to college and I was going to law school at the same time. And I was like putting myself through working in movies. And I had taken some time off to do a picture for Joe Mankiewicz at Warner Brothers called It Was a Crooked Man. It was written by Newman and Benton, people that did Bonnie and Clyde. And it starred Kirk Douglas and Henry Fonda and Burgess Meredith in a huge big movie that I had the third lead in. So it had not been released at the time that my agent called me and said, there's something real interesting going on at Fox. And there's a guy over there that has made several films, and they made a lot of dough. And the people at Fox would love to have him come and make some of that dough for them. His name's Russ Meyer, and I had loved his other pictures in The Immoral Mr. Tease, and I knew who he was. And I went over and I sat down with him, and he was unlike anybody I'd ever met in this business before. He was candid, not full of bullshit, at least as I read it. And you know, he said, you know what I'd like to do? You've done a lot of work, and a lot of the other people that are going to be in this film haven't. And I'd like you to come in here and sort of be the linchpin in this. And I said, Jesus, that was a great stroke for my ego, right? And then I thought about the Warner Brothers picture coming out, and I thought about a lot of things, and I said, I don't know. And he said, I'll tell you something, we are going to have a lot of fun. That I can promise you. And we really did. I'll tell you, the kinds of things that happened during and after the the relationships that came from this picture, I mean, it's, you know, Russ was married to Edie after the picture. I went out with Cynthia Myers for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years.
Your kid.
Dolly married Dick Martin, and he would come down on the set down at Fox, and I mean, it was a time, you gotta understand also, 1969, 70, that this town was just sizzling. I mean, it was a drug culture, sex was wide open, there weren't any diseases or problems, and I tell you, he was a man of his word. We really had a lot of fun. Thank you for inviting me this evening. I really, really enjoyed it. I can't tell you, it just blew me away. Thanks.
Who's next in line? Haji.
Hi again, it's nice to see all the people here today. Thanks for coming. What was the question? What did the film do?
Well, I just know, what was your life like in 1969 before this movie, and how did the film change that?
It's always been a pleasure working for us. I was away at the time when Russ was committed to do this film for 20th. But you know, when I was working with him on Kill Kill Pussycat, I used to always tell Russ, oh, you're going to go to the big time. Don't worry, Russ, you're going to be working at the big time. He used to be very modest and said, oh, sure, sure. And when I came back into town, someone told me, did you hear about your friend Russ Myers? He's working over at 20. And I went, oh, I can't believe it. Immediately, I got in my car and I went to 20th Century. I didn't even call and say I was coming. I just went to the gate. And they said, yes. And I said, oh, I'd like to see Russ Myers. Could you please tell him Haji is here? And he greeted me very nicely. Went upstairs. It was so exciting to walk into the office and see him there. I says, I told you, baby, you're going to make it to the big time. And he says, where have you been? And anyway, he says, listen, everybody's been cast. And he was very nice. He said, I'm just going to put you in somewhere. You'll work for a couple of weeks, make some money, and we'll find something for you to do. And he let me figure out some of the dance scenes that I did, which is I enjoyed doing. And then from there, after the film was over, I had such a small part in the film, but I got a lot of publicity from it. I don't know why, but I had a nice spread in Show Magazine and a few others. So I figured, well, maybe I can make a little money from this. So I took the publicity. I went to an agent. I said, look, and I was a dancer at the time. So I said, why don't you send me on the road and make some money? And he says, better yet, I'll book you in Vegas. It was the Circus. And I worked there for a while. I made some good money, and it was a nice place to work, it really was. And that was my rewards from Beyond the Valley of Dolls.
Thank you.
Yes.
Edie Williams.
I'd like to strap you on sometime. But, you know, Roger, I get more fan letters that they really like the lines you wrote.
You know, I can't take credit for that line. That line is Russ's line, and I think he got it from some. I'd like to strap you on sometime.
Oh, no, I'm sure that's Edie's line.
Well, let's see. I met Russ at 20th Century Fox, and he showed me the script. I said, oh my God, you're going to film this in 6 weeks? This script, it needs 3 months. And I remember I said, I really would like to be able to rehearse on the set for it in order to be really good at what I was doing. And it was wonderful because most directors, they don't stop and get real involved with what they're doing. They do it very, very fast. And he said, okay, if you want to rehearse, and you have to be on the soundstage before the crew arrives at 5 in the morning. And I thought, oh, wow, he is game. This is incredible. It's fantastic. I thought, okay, you're on. And we did. We met at very early in the morning, and we mapped out the scenes on the set, using props and everything we were going to do. We planned it all out. And then his crew came, and I really felt like the scenes went much better than other films that I've done, because he had that rapport. You know, he communicated with everybody, and he invited everybody to come to his apartment and rehearse scenes, and he thinks that. And then we got married. And I had a wonderful time with him because we got to go promote the picture. It was great. Me and him and Fiona Valley of the Dolls, the three of us, we went to all these exciting places. We went to London, and we went to Chicago. And we did good. We didn't know. And then I did something else, and he did something else. But it's incredible because it's like, you know, everywhere, it's like part of my life, and I'm real proud of it. Everywhere I go, it's like people, they ask me about him, and I say, well, we don't really see each other, but actually we haven't been next to each other closely in about, what, 12 years. So right in front of everybody right now, I have to shake Russ's hand because he got us all here tonight. You're all witnesses.
I'd like to bring up one point when we did the Rolls-Royce sequence. The Bentley. I showed, or the Bentley, whatever. I showed it to Edie. I was a little concerned because I had met her family, and I was afraid maybe it might have been a little too strong. And she chastised me for saying it's got to be stronger than this. And one shot that was in the film was because of her criticism. She says, I at least should take off my pants. And that really, yeah, you really chewed my ass out there.
I said, I can't do the scene with all these people around watching. And I said, you know, you're going to have everybody leave. And I said, because otherwise there's no way I can do, I've never done nudity in a picture before. And so, actually he was very nice because he said, okay, I'll have the crew leave and everybody leave the set and I'll turn the camera on, you can do the scene yourself. Something like that. Anyway, we should have kept the goddamn Rolls Royce.
Well, anyway. Also, I think she had come up with some really good stuff, particularly that thing, you know, the strap yarn, that line with when we had the Princess Livingston and the guy by the name of Ross and so forth. It was a marvelous piece of acting together with the fact, too, about driving along in the Rolls Royce. That was, I mean, I think you contributed so big to that motion picture, no question. Just as everybody else did, but you had a special side, very much to bear, and I do appreciate that so much. Your contribution was very, very large.
Thank you, Edie. John, why don't you tell us what you've done before Z-Man?
Well, I was in Hawaii doing Camus' Caligula, and the late Bill Benjamin, he was a casting agent for Fox, and he discovered me and brought me out to Fox. I met Russ. Russ handed me the Vorpal blade, those Snicker Snack. I looked at it, and I said, okay, and I did it, and he seemed to like it. I was so new to the film business that for the first 6 weeks, I thought I was shooting a Western. And, you know, to placate me, they said, you know, really you're doing Richard III, so they treated me very well. But what else do you want to know? Oh, I sired my first son during the shooting of that film. Now a policeman in San Francisco, which is really weird. I'm from San Francisco. My father was a gambler. I'm an actor. He's a cop. I don't know where we went wrong. That's about it. I'll tell you, honestly, it's the best role I've ever had in films, and Russ is, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the best director I've ever worked with. I'd kill to get a role like that again. Literally.
It just so happens we got one role coming up that you're probably very well suited for.
Didn't say that.
Oh.
So, David, what was your life like in 1969?
Shut up. He knows me.
First of all, Mike, I like a rematch. Quickly. It's my life like, I don't know what it was like, but this was my first and last role in the motion picture business. But I still feel like a star. No, it was a big opportunity for me at the time. I mean, this was one of those things where you sit down and you read for somebody, and you've studied acting in college, and you've done teenage drama workshops, you know, Cinderella, Rumpelstiltskin, and stuff like that. And you sit down in front of somebody who's professional, you know, producers, Roger and Russ, and they go, God, that was a great reading, and you go, really? You know? And they go, you know, you're kind of up for this part, and you kind of go, oh, okay. I knew that. And you take your little portfolio with your little 8x10s, and you walk out on the platform, and you jump down the stairs, you know, like this. But no, seriously, Michael and John and Dolly and Chuck and a few other people that aren't here helped me out immensely on this. I mean, I was out in the ozone, and they befriended me, and we had a great time, and these people are really, really wonderful, and it's tough to be an actor, real tough. And to stay in the business like they have, to contribute like they have, is to be commendable, seriously.
It's your turn, Dolly.
Oh, God. I'm from England, and I was a playmate in 1966 at Playboy magazine, and came to America, and in 1969 I was broke. I'm talking broke, because I couldn't work really over here, and I remember going to the International House of Pancakes to get a job as a waitress, and they turned me down. And to this day, I've never been in an International House of Pancakes. That'll show 'em. And I was really, really broke, and my agent sent me for the role, and in fact, not for this role, a different role. And as I went up to 20th Century Fox, there was a big sign up, and they had made Hello, Dolly then. And it said, Hello, Dolly. And I said, yeah! And I got the job, and Russ was fabulous, is fabulous, but tough. Woo! I mean, he's got heart of mush. He's just the most wonderful, warm-hearted, super guy. But he's like Papa Bear, and he between threatening you every 5 minutes and loving you every 5 minutes, he was a total gentleman and a super guy, and Roger was a staple. Every time Russ was going to make me cry, Roger was there. Right, one can remember that? He doesn't remember that. But then I remember after the movie was over, and we all had a super time. After the movie was over, and I was in the hospital for one thing or another, and when I woke up from the operation, there was Russ with a big bouquet of red roses, and the first person I saw, he's always been there for me. He was there when my parents came over from England. He took them to San Francisco. I mean, he's a super, super guy, and I loved doing the movie, and it took a lot of guts for me to come here 20 years later. Lower that light a bit.
Well, Charles, you've made several films with Russ. How was this one a different experience from the others?
You know, they keep saying all these wonderful things. How come you never did that for me? Shit. We made him out of the back of a pickup truck. No, I was just watching this. This was a strange twist for me, this character, because he'd already trained me. You know, I was an actor trained in, which I wouldn't advocate sex, violence, and drugs, but I was already burned out when I got to this. You know, we used to really bludgeon them all over the side of the mountain. I can't remember live ammunition, believe it or not, man. It's like basic training, you know? 4 chicks, 1 grip, and a campfire. 2 steaks, that was it for 6 weeks. By God, we're talking about Death Valley. You watched the movie, you didn't walk out till you made it. You were dead. I'm not kidding you. Ask Haji. She was a little distracting. She used to do makeup with only sneakers on. It was bad enough as it was. I think the first time I met Russ, I was going with a chick with very large melons, and she said she had an audition with this guy, and wanted me to go along and make sure she didn't get raped. And I think that's how I met Russ. She didn't get the job. I wound up playing the sheriff in Cherry, Harry, and Raquel. And Super Vixens, but anyway, it's been fun, and I've gotten a lot out of it. I'm still working actively, thank God. And I've done okay by Russ, and you know, the career's still going, thank God. By the way, how would you guys like to see another one called Up the Valley of the Beyond? Would you like that?
Yeah.
All right. Well, he and Roger are trying to put something together. I think we hope they can bring it off. But anyway, thank you for coming and everything else.
This film is very successful. This is the 20th anniversary of the picture. Some people think the film was not a success. I'm proud to say that owning 10% of it, I got my check last month, 20 years. Not too many films pay off that long. I don't want to put it on necessarily on a monetary level, but yes, I have every reason to believe that the film would be just as successful today as it was then. Fox was very much in need of a monetary transfusion. They were shocked by the fact that it did get an X rating. One thing, I pleaded the case, but it was unsuccessful. I recall the puzzlement on the part of Richard Zanuck and Brown, so on and so forth, and the distribution arm when they saw a rough cut of it. And no one really understood it like Roger and I did. And Zanuck said to head of distribution, he said, Peter Myers, he was the head of distribution at Fox, he says, what do you think we got to do? And Peter said, well, I think what we have to do is take this and put it to 50 theaters and hope to make some money with it because we're very much in need of the cash flow, or increasing our cash flow. And I had to rise to the front. This is my baby. I've worked with it, you know, for a long, long time. As any of the films I've made, it's always a very personal issue. Well, any filmmaker of any kind of content would feel much the same as I did. And I got up and, of course, offended the distribution arm. I said, no, this is not the way to do it. What you have to do is get one theater on the board and let the film build. Let there be a lot of talk about it. Get some good reviews, hopefully. Even bad ones, they work just as well. And Zanuck said, well, it sounds like a good idea. He turned to Peter and he says, anything available on the boulevard? And Peter jumped up and says, no, there's nothing available. And Zanuck had his brightest hour. He stood up and he said, go out and buy it, Peter. So we ended up with the Pantages, and the rest is history, the film. It still plays to this day. I had the good fortune of going to Moscow and showing together with Super Vixens and Mud Honey, I was called into taking, which is looked upon by some people as an interesting Gothic presentation on my part. The Russians didn't go for it. It was just too damn depressing. But they loved Super Vixens, which starred Charles Napier as Harry Sledge, and they loved Beyond the Valley of the Gods. Instead of one screening, we had 6 screenings with each of these. And we even went out into the neighborhood theaters and showed the films, always packed. And I had a marvelous lady who was one of those United Nations types of translators, and she was able to take every part and translate it. The audience just hung in there with that, and if she got a little bit behind, they'd start clapping. My reaction to the Soviet changed enormously after having, visited the country and noticed the people saw in something that I had produced many, many years before, in each instance, and embraced it so warmly, and enjoyed it just like us folks do.
Can I ask what the critics at the time thought of this movie?
I want to just add something to what was just said, if I could. If you look in the official corporate history of 20th Century Fox, published by the company on the occasion of its corporate anniversary, you won't find any mention of Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. If you read David Brown's recent autobiography, he lumps it in with Myra Breckenridge, another picture made at the same time, and dismisses them in less than a paragraph as flops. The movie grossed in 1970 $47 million, and it cost $900,000 to make, of which a large percentage of that was paid to Jacqueline Suzanne for 2 screenplays that were not used. And so, by any terms imaginable, it was an enormous hit. It is still on the Variety list of all-time top-grossing films. What has annoyed me over the years is the willingness of various managements at the studio to pretend that they never made this movie. They have not, despite the fact that it has been constantly in repertory for 20 years, that it plays at the Electric Cinema on Portobello Road in London every Saturday at midnight. That's where the Sex Pistols saw it more than a decade ago. Despite the fact that it plays in Paris, in Germany, and all over the world. They won't make new prints. They don't like to keep it in stock in 35mm. They released it briefly in video and then withdrew it, and to this day it is not available in any video format. Although I'm happy to say that apparently the Criterion Collection, which is the most prestigious organization connected with home video, is going to bring out a letterbox version of Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. But Fox is not scripted, and I submit to you that they didn't make any other movies in 1970 that are as widely seen today, and that would include Patton, MASH, and Butch Cassidy, their other releases that year. It sounds like a little bit like I'm blowing my own horn, but I'm quite a soloist, actually.
I've never really had the opportunity of sitting in an audience and seeing one of Mr. Meyer's films over there. I've only seen it on video. And I really have to say it was a really groovy experience. And I just have 2 questions, one for Mr. Meyer and one for Mr. Ebert. The first one for Mr. Meyer. Did Tom Wolfe ever write a screenplay for you?
No, that's a guy that I knew in the Army. His name was Thomas J. McGowan, and I warned him. I said, you should not use that suit. He was in Cherry Iron Calville. Charles Napier started the first opportunity I had to work with Jim. So, gratefully, Thomas Wolfe never said a thing. Or Tom Wolfe. It was on the credits.
Do you think that your affiliation with Mr. Meyer is in any way endangered a second Pulitzer Prize?
I'm accused of ruining a lot of careers. But
I won the Pulitzer Prize after my association with Russ Meyer. I won it in 1975. I don't really bring it up on the show very frequently. I don't feel that that's necessary since I'm sure that it's constantly in Gene's mind. But I'll answer your question fairly seriously because there might be the feeling that it would be disreputable to be associated with Russ Meyer. In other words, I wrote this movie, but then I went on to win the Pulitzer Prize and to get a national television show and to publish books, and so now I might want to just dismiss this as a youthful indiscretion, hot-headed adolescent that I was at that time, no better and I'm wiser now. One thing that I have learned from Russ Meyer that I try to practice in my own life is a lot of people have their lives divided up into compartments. And this compartment is open for some people, and this compartment is open for other people, and you can know this, but you can't know that. And if I'm with this group, I'll say one thing, and I'm with this group, I'll say something else, so that I can be all things to all people. Russ Meyer, I think everybody at this table will agree with this, Russ Meyer's life is all inside one big embracing compartment. Everybody who knows Russ Meyer knows everybody else who knows Russ Meyer. I can remember going out to dinner with Russ and his pulchritudinous lady of the moment, and also with an old Army sergeant who was on the edge of senility probably, and this was his one night a week to get some barbecued ribs and a chance to look at a pretty girl, and Russ was loyal to this man because this man had been loyal to him during the war. Russ has stood by his family, he has stood by his friends, he has flown across the country to visit people in need of him. He came halfway across America in order to attend my mother's funeral and flew back the same day because he wanted to be there. And Dolly spoke about him being at her bedside. Russ doesn't have the girls snuck off in the bedroom and the Army buddies in the living room and the critics up in the library and the producers down waiting for him at the bank. Everybody is always part of the same thing. There is no hypocrisy in Russ's behavior. He will tell you exactly what he thinks. He will not try to put a different light on his behavior on one occasion than he will on another occasion. He is one of the most honest people I've ever met. And there might be a tendency or a temptation for me to think that it might not be wise at this point in my career to be on a panel like this or to be associated with Russ, but to deny that would really be, I think, dishonest for me, and I wouldn't want to do that. Just because I've had success in other areas doesn't mean that I haven't certainly enjoyed and learned from the work that I've done with Russ.
Who did the camera work on Dolls, was a great contributor. I was saddened when he was interviewed recently in the International Photographer. I'm a member of that union as well as the Directors Guild and Writers Guild, in which he listed all of the films he'd done, and one film was pointedly absent, and that was Beyond the Mountain Dove.
That was because of his wife. His wife was very jealous of all the good-looking women.
Well, that might be, yeah. Well, migraine headache, and he was replaced by another cameraman. It hurt me naturally because I'm very proud of the film, and I can say to him, in spite of the fact that he ignored it, his contribution was huge. And he told me the last day of shooting, he said, we're running down the beaches when we'd done in Martin Bormann and the surf. He said, would you ever hire me again if you had another film? I said, eventually. He says, well, I am very honored. And he told me. But anyway, this is the business. You don't necessarily always run into a guy can be a certain character on a given day, and 6 months later he's incredible. But his contribution cannot be ignored. You see his name up on the screen and the work he did, particularly with that Scorser's Apprentice sequence. The lighting is enormous. We did like 80 setups in one day. It was a nice moment of experience.
Well, I have time for one more question, and I'm going to ask it. I wanted to ask Mr. Ebert, considering the fact that this film has a nice rating, how do you differentiate Russ Meyer's films from pornography?
Russ doesn't ordinarily direct sex scenes in a way intended to arouse anyone. In my way of thinking, or in terms of the way I look at his films, the lesbian sequence in Vixen is the only erotic scene in all of Russ Meyer's work. And what the point that people have missed is that Russ is a comic director operating in a pop art context. He will almost invariably cut away from a sex scene in such a way as to frustrate the anticipations of what he cheerfully refers to as the one-armed viewers. He likes to cut away to demolition derbies, oil wells, various other aspects of from his industrial filmmaking. He also frequently, he seems to be very reluctant to locate a sex scene in bed. He'd much rather have it in a treetop or in a barnyard or in the backseat of a Rolls Royce. When he does shoot it in bed, he invariably likes to use an angle that has not been exploited by other directors, from directly beneath the action, shooting up through naked steel bed springs. The notion that one can be comfortable having sex in this position is one that I have never wanted to put into practice by trying out for myself. I don't think it's possible. I think you need a mattress at the very least. And then he will cut away to details. He is the master of the insert shot. The little wheel at the bottom of the bed jerking back and forth, or an exterior and the whole house is shaking. It's a comic attitude towards sex that he's dealing with here. When he talks about sex as being confrontations, I think that is the way that sex is presented. It's an Olympic event in his films, in which there are hardly ever any winners. And so that because they, to me at least, they're not erotic and they're not arousing, they don't qualify as pornographic, if I understand the Supreme Court's definition. I think that, to repeat something I said earlier, once the issue of sex is cleared away, you see, and I've never discussed this with Russ, or at least if I have, I don't know if he's agreed with me or not. I've always felt that the role that sex plays in Russ Meyer's cinema is that it allows him to make his own films and make money doing it. He can make any film he wants. He has financed most of his own films and released them himself, produced them, directed them himself, written most of them himself, photographed some of them himself, edited some of them himself. He can do physically every job that you need to do on a film, from photographing to sound to editing to casting to direction to promotion to advertising. And he has won that freedom by using sex as his nominal subject, because there are kinds of films you can make at a certain budget level. Every beginning filmmaker in UCLA knows that you can get a horror film made. That doesn't need to have stars in it. And a sex film doesn't need to have stars in it because the subject matter is the star. And to me, that's the way Russ uses sex, not as his obsession, not as his interest, but as the ticket that he buys in order to be able to enjoy the rest of the ride. But I don't know if Russ would agree with that or not.
Well, as you pointed out, I said before, they were confrontations. One critic once said that when his characters experience an orgasm, they're out of house. It's like the mating of the wildebeest and the water buffalo. Enormously noisy, leash-breaking capabilities. The women, of course, are the aggressors. They're the ones in charge. They're the smart ones. That's why I rarely have any difficulty with feminist organizations. You realize that the men are all klutzes, willing tools of the women. I hung in there, and I was influenced very strongly by Al Cap, if you recall it in his work, Daisy May, that they were the smart people. The men were the willing klutzes that conformed to their wishes. They followed that pattern. I think it will continue as I make films. The women will always be the same personage in any film.
Thank you.
I just want to thank all of you at the archive for coming. My only regret is Jesse Helms isn't here. But there goes our grant, but it was really worth it. Thanks so much.
Can I say something else? I'm sitting here at this table with a number of people that I admire so much. They contributed so much to this picture. Without any one of their participation in Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, the picture would be of far less value. I mean, Mike Blodgett, what an incredible job he did. I mean, there couldn't have been anybody else that played that role nearly as well as you did. Not a doubt. Physically, mentally, his humor, his satire. Of course, Edie Williams, probably one of the most interesting sequences I've ever shot. No, the one for the Rolls Royce. Because here, it was an industrial film. Here I had the motor car and the emblems and the hubcaps, willing tool at her disposal. Right now, here's Charles Lee. Where's Charles? Charles and I have done some real struggles together. Without his help, I wouldn't have been able to dredge myself up after having made a couple of losers, Black Snake in 7 minutes. We made a film together. Without his aid, it wouldn't have worked. I must work again with him. We plan to do so. It won't be the Elvis Presley. It'll be more like what were we thinking now in terms of country western. Okay. All right, now, Dolly. Remember I said something to you in one of the reviews. I've completed a book and I've got a tremendous wealth of good and bad reviews, and I choose to use them all. One person made a reference to you with your wide-eyed look. In the beginning, when you said groovy, which always gets a laugh. And someone said she resembled a mouseketeer at a gangbang. There was only one person that could have played Superman. This man right here. There was no one else. We had no one. And he had the ability to play it so straight. And he had this great background, this Shakespearean background, there's no question about it. I've often felt a little unhappy by the fact that I may have ruined his career, but you see, the man has not decomposed. He looks as good today. This is 20 years later. I can't well use it again. I tell you, I admire you so very, very much. Now, this man here, over here, who played Harrison. Roger's managing editor made reference to, and I noticed, I picked up on the audience when the girl said, Cynthia said, what you need is a downer. I mean, this guy was so down. He was so expert. I was ignoring by the fact that she said, she even told me, Ashley told me I was a lousy lay. I made an ass of myself. She said, what you need is a downer. Any further down. Marvelous job. Marvelous job. Such a pleasure to see you. I was concerned you weren't coming. And your secretary called, and then I put her in touch with Mike, and there's a man now. I have to say thank you so much. He said something to me. He says, you know, what do I do? I've never done this sort of thing. I said, just get on the phone and call all the people you can possibly call and make sure you got that. And I think you delivered everybody. Yeah. Except Duncan MacLeod, who regrettably, I tried to reach him. Yeah. And I think everybody else we tried. I regret Jack Harmon isn't here, who did the marvelous montage. I had an opportunity to work off the lot. The great sound man who did the mixing, Don Mason, who regrettably is gone. I toast him. Henry Rowland, who played Mark Gorman, and so many of my friends. Dear lovely. Yes, I owe so much to him. Very much so. And then, Roger. I mean, he's so honest. He does not, he gets on a show and they grill him and say, what about this guy Meyer, this pornographer? What do you say about working on his film? He comes right, straight on, head on, says it like it is. He's not kissing anybody's ass. He's just simply saying, he's a friend of mine. I like his films. I was pleased to have been part of them. And hopefully again. There's the true measure. And now he said I went to see him and his mother. He sat there three days with my mother. He gave up his time. Now that's the kind of friend that you can't ever be. So
Good.